Hi, I'm Ava Bauschatz, and this is my video attachment for the Davidson Fellow Scholarship. My project, which is a retrospective analysis on the impact of alcohol consumption and cancer incidence in the United States, took a lot of data analysis, a lot of pattern recognition, and it required a deep understanding of the biological concepts at play. I want to take this time to highlight the intricate work that led me to draw my conclusions, to restate my findings, and to explain the importance of my research and the doors that it's opened within the field of cancer epidemiology. To begin, I want to talk about my outline that I generated at the very beginning of my project. So I started by stating my research question, which evolved a little bit over time, but to begin was, is there a correlation between alcohol consumption and cancer incidence in the United States? My hypothesis at the time that I generated through my literature review process, where I analyzed existing research in this field, was that a correlation does exist between alcohol consumption and cancers of the upper aerodigestive tract. That could also vary by state. One of the main data sets that I used when I was generating my data was the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism's 120th Surveillance Report. As you can see here, it's quite a long document that outlines various claims towards the beginning, but eventually gets into per capita ethanol consumption for states. And they break it down into beer, wine, and spirits, but I specifically utilized the data across all beverage types. I also included all years and all states. As you can see here, I generated this data into a very large table that I eventually referenced as one of my own databases. And as you can see here, I generated a graph to represent all of this data to see if there were any visual patterns. This was very helpful when I was conducting my final data analysis. Additionally, the second main data source that I utilized was SEER-STAT data, specifically through the National Cancer Institute's online state cancer profiles. As you can see here, the data that they use is from 2002 to 2021. Specifically, it's incidence data, which was really helpful for my specific research project because I was focusing on incidence as opposed to mortality data, which is much more readily available. So this was a really great source, and I was really glad to find it. It's publicly available. Specifically, what I have pulled up here is for Ohio, and it's across all cancer types. When I did my own breakdown, I referenced every single state. As you can see, this is just one example here. And I broke it down specifically by cancers that I deemed alcohol attributable within my initial literature review. These cancer types were bladder, breast, colon and rectum, esophageal, liver and bile duct, and oral cavity and pharynx cancers. I also generated small graphs for each of these individual data sets to see again if there was anything visual that I could pick up on. So I compiled all of that data eventually into a very large data set where I brought in all of that data, breaking it down by establishing a time buffer. As might be common sense, I established in my literature review that for alcohol attributable cancers, they take a significant amount of time, typically 15 to 30 years, to establish a correlation. I also added a 10-year buffer to see if there was anything I could generate that was unique there. I generated regressions for each time buffer, as you can see here, specifically just in this case of bladder cancer. As the time buffer increases, you can see that the slope actually decreases and the coefficient of determination decreases as well. There were a lot of findings like this that I observed when I created even more of these regressions across all of these cancer types, and I compiled all of that data into this first page here where I identify all of the findings from the regressions. Specifically, I broke those down by p-value, slope, and r-squared value, and as you can see down here, I generated graphs for each of those as well. So, now that I've talked a little bit about my process, I want to get into my findings and discuss the importance of the research that I've actually conducted here. My primary finding was the negative correlation between alcohol consumption and colon and rectum and oral cavity and pharynx cancers at the 30-year time difference. For colon and rectum cancers, this finding was actually statistically significant, which I proved through analysis of variance. I broke down this correlation further by grouping states into quartiles, as you can see here. The lower quartiles, or the states with higher alcohol consumption, were notably wealthier states. This finding could be attributed to medical care being higher quality and more accessible in these states, and nevertheless is indicative of further research needed to be done in this area. Additionally, my research provides data that could be used to predict future incidence of alcohol-attributable cancers on the population level. Specifically, I found that linear regressions could be used to predict rates of cancer of the liver and bile duct 30 years or more after consumption, and for breast and bladder cancer, 10 years after consumption. Finally, the data that I've gathered is in support of alcohol as a carcinogen, which additionally supports the use of alcohol moderation programs and increase awareness of the alcohol cancer link. I think that my research has really opened doors for future researchers in this area, which could ultimately reduce the epidemic of alcohol-attributable cancer incidence and mortality in the U.S. Through this project, I've learned a lot about statistical analysis as well as my own interest in the field of epidemiology, and I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to pursue it. Thank you so much for listening and for your consideration.